Welcome to Changing the Game, where bold leaders, rule breakers, and trailblazers drop the playbook and share how they lead, win, and shake things up.
Hey there, it's Jordan, your host. If you've been loving the conversations on Changing the Game, I'm excited to introduce something new, the Nobody Cares Club, a show about building the life you actually want without worrying so much about what everyone else thinks. We're talking confidence, wellness, identity, relationships, and the reminder that nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they are. And that's the best news you'll ever hear. So stop waiting, stop overthinking, and get ready to be inspired to go after your dreams. Search Nobody Cares Club wherever you listen, launching summer 2026.
Welcome back to the show. Today I'm joined by Madeline Davis Tully. Madeline is a former national champion, All-American, and captain of the women's lightweight rowing team at Princeton, who then went on to coach many years at the Division I level. She won another 3 national championships coaching the lightweights at Stanford and 2 at Ohio State, and served as the head coach at Boston University. She then went on to launch her own leadership coaching company, MDT Leadership. Now she works with ambitious mid-level professionals who know they're capable of more and are ready to lead with greater clarity, confidence, and impact. Madeline, you have quite the resume, and I'm so excited to dive into it. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Jordan. I'm really excited to chat.
I'm so excited to learn so much about rowing today, too, because everyone listening offline, Madeline was giving me quite the lesson on rowing. So I need her to just give us a little background on her career. You were a lightweight women's national champion, an All-American, and a captain. What was it like getting to that chapter? Were you always a rower?
I started rowing in high school. And one thing that I really love about rowing is you can't really do it much before high school. And so it's something that people come to later in life as far as sports are concerned. And in fact, it's the only sport you can really walk on, like as a true novice at the collegiate level and be really successful and do it with no rowing background. And I think that's something that makes the sport really special. I was definitely not always an athlete. I always liked sports. I played a lot of sports. I was not good at any of them until I started rowing. I grew up outside Philadelphia, and there's a lot of rowing there. Boathouse Row is a very well-known landmark both in the sport and in the city. My dad is a rower as well, so I grew up seeing him row. So I had been around it a while, and so I decided to give it a try when I got to high school, and I just really loved it from the beginning. I really loved how directly correlated the input and the output were. If I just did it more, rowed more, I got better. And that was something that I hadn't really experienced in other sports. And so I really started to build momentum and really love seeing the outcome of that work very directly. And that led me to just want to keep doing more and more and more of it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You said like the input directly affected the output. And I'm curious because rowing is really a team sport, right? Like it is, or how would you describe it? Because I sometimes think about like, oh, with individual sports, like you directly affect the output yourself. Yeah. But with team sports, sometimes it doesn't always work that way. So how was that different compared to other sports that you tried growing up?
Yeah. So something that's interesting about rowing too is it is both the ultimate team sport. Like there are no rock stars. You're not going to be like the highest point scorer in rowing. And so it is the ultimate team sport. And there are singles races. You can race in a boat alone. You can race in a double. And so there's all different kinds of boat classes, singles, doubles, quads, pairs, 4s, 8s. There's a whole lot of options. And so when you're rowing in a quad or a 4 or an 8, where there's 4 or 8 rowers, and then sometimes a coxswain, that's a big group of people. That's a very much a team-oriented event. But you can also race a single. You can row a double where it's just you and one other person. And in my high school career, I rowed the doubles a lot. I rowed the single a lot. And I really liked having that pressure that comes with being in a single. I liked knowing that the outcome was mine alone, win or lose, because if I won, like I did that. And if I didn't, I knew I could go fix it.
Yep.
And whereas when you're in a team boat, it's a lot harder to parse out the individual contributions. And so if you do fall short of your goals, it's really hard to identify if there was a weak point, if it was a collective effort. And so it becomes really so much about trust and supporting each other and having each other's backs, and being able to withstand sort of the pitfalls that can come over the course of a season and stay together through that, in a way that I think is really different than in a lot of places.
Yeah, that's really cool. I had no idea that there was single rowing. So I'm already learning so much, because I think I've only seen maybe like the big boats with all of the rowers in it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. The US is a very big boat country. We are very focused on eights. We do a lot of eights. Like,
okay.
and in the rowing world, we are like known for being really into eights, and a little less into the skill and the finesse, some would say, of the smaller boats.
Totally. So it kind of feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like it feels like the bigger boats is a different sport. Like it's a different strategy, right?
There's not a lot of strategy in rowing, to be honest. It's just like go as fast as you can from A to B.
Okay.
Sometimes you push harder in the beginning, and then you sort of shift into a base rhythm. You might have some points in the race where you make a little bit of a move, you try to get ahead of another crew or break open from another crew, but it's not a ton of strategy. It's just sort of like, this is going to suck. Is it going to suck for 6 minutes or 7 minutes or 8 minutes? Depending on what kind of boat class you're in. Training doesn't change a ton, really. I think the biggest thing that changes is the selection for the crew, and how the coach has to go about deciding who's in which boat and who's in which seat within each boat. That changes a lot based on the boat classes that you're dealing with. But the race itself is pretty much just go.
That's so fun. The only experience I have in a rower is on a rowing machine at the gym. So
yeah, you're not alone. That's most people's exposure to the sport. And I think rowers have a love-hate relationship with the erg, because we've just spent so much time on it. And it's not the most exciting event. You just sit there, and if you're lucky, there's a mirror in front of you. But that's about it. And the numbers are there all the time, and the numbers don't lie. And every stroke, exactly what your pace is. And so you get a lot of feedback on that. I've certainly spent a lot of long winter days on ergs for, since I was 13. Still am.
Yeah, that probably teaches you a different level of dedication, because you're not on the water. You're not in this beautiful environment. It's cold outside. You have to still dedicate your training. But this time you're in a gym. And like you said, it's just you in the mirror.
Yeah. It gives me a lot of respect for swimmers, because I think there's a lot of overlap between rowing and swimming. It's in the sense that it's one repetitive motion over and over and over again. But rowers, at least when we're outside, you have the scenery, the sunrise, the water, there's a bald eagle flying overhead, all of that. You get some distraction, and swimmers are just looking at that line in the bottom of the pool. And that's like what winter training is like for us. We're just in a room on an erg with a bunch of other people looking straight ahead of you, just looking at your numbers every time. I think it definitely builds a level of resilience and grit, and just the ability to suffer that is really valuable.
I'm sure that's come up so much throughout your career, and I know we'll get into that as we go through the episode today. I do want to get a little bit more understanding of rowing. You are a lightweight national champion. What does that mean exactly? How is that different from another class? How does it work?
Yeah. So in rowing, there's open weight or heavyweight rowing, and then there's lightweight rowing. And lightweight rowing now really only exists at the collegiate level. It used to exist with juniors, and it doesn't anymore, which I think was probably a good idea. And it actually, just in the next upcoming Olympics, will be the first Olympics without lightweight rowing. So It is something that is in flux. It was it's still contested internationally, but will not be contested at the Olympics. So it is maybe on, I don't know, not great standing at the moment internationally.
Why is that? Can we get into that or no?
So yeah, no, so rowing has expanded into coastal rowing, and beach sprints. And so there's like traditional, what's now being called flat water rowing, which is what you think of when you think of rowing in the Olympics,
Okay.
which is rowing on, a lake or a river. And now they're expanding to rowing on, on the ocean, essentially, and doing coastal rowing with like, rowing over waves and out into the water, sort of more like beach patrol. If anyone's familiar with like lifeguards and beach patrol competition, it's kind of like that. And so essentially they had to give up some rowing slots to be able to add more of this kind of rowing slot. And so unfortunately the lightweights kind of were the sacrificial lamb in that respect. It is a smaller field, collegiately in the US, there are a lot fewer schools that have lightweight rowing than have open weight rowing. Not all schools offer both. And some schools will offer it for women and not for men, or vice versa. So at BU, where I coached, we had a lightweight women's rowing team, but not a lightweight men's rowing team. Where I rowed in college at Princeton, we had lightweight men and women. And what it is, like it sounds like, it's a weight class sport. And so for women, it's under 130 pounds. And so the day before we race, we would weigh in. And really what it's doing is it's accounting for height. You're kind of using weight as a proxy for height, because height and length and levers are such an advantage in rowing. And so this is trying to account for the fact that, like in wrestling or boxing or something like that, sports where there's such a big advantage like that, it makes a category where people who are actually sort of like more normal sized, like I'm not small in the general population, but I walk into a boathouse and I'm pretty small. So it's kind of making a category for more like normal sized, average size, let's say. People.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm learning so much about the sport. That's so cool. So you went on you won a national championship, which is amazing. What was that like? Or what was your favorite memory from competing at Princeton?
We had a lot of good times and a lot of bad times. I think like any collegiate career, like we definitely had some disappointments, but we had some really, really exciting wins along the way. I think, one of my favorite races was my junior year. We were racing the University of Wisconsin, who were the lightweight powerhouse at the time. And we had not beaten them in that boat class for a long time. And we raced them in a dual race at home. So we were at our boathouse on our body of water. And we had just like really gone all in on, I said there was no strategy. There's a little bit of strategy, and particularly in dual races where it's just one crew and another, and you can really feed off of each other in a way that you can't do when it's 6 boats across, which is what it is in most regattas. And so we just really went all in on trying to stick with them for the first half of the race and surprise them, and be able to get ahead and stay ahead. And we did. And it was like the tightest racing I've ever been in. And we just hung on and just kind of inched back through them across the course of the race. And so to be able to have that win at home, on our lake was really something special. And then a couple of years later at trials to make the under 23 national team, we actually had a race I was in the double, but very similar with another crew where we were just side by side the whole way and just, stroke for stroke all the way down. And we were able to pull it out at the end. And just to have 2 of those races where you're really just, one crew and another crew just going bow ball for bow ball all the way down, and to be able to come out on top. Those were 2 really great races.
Yeah, I bet those are the ones that stick with you for sure. Like the easy wins are fun, but the ones where you're just like, I got to give it everything I got to cross the finish line here. Yeah. And then you come out on top on the other side. Those are the ones that I remember too from school. Those are so fun.
Yeah. And I think there's something out in both of those races where it's just the 2 of you. It wasn't the whole field. It was like, it felt really personal and felt really, confrontational, but in a good way. I think all of those competitors, we saw each other all the time. We raced each other many times over the course of a spring or 4 years, and they they made us better. And I like to think that we made them better. And to be able to go head to head and be challenged and have to raise your level like that, I think is the gift of a competitor. And so it was really nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's cool. It's like really, like you said, like personal and like, I don't mean like, yeah, it's just like a really intimate competitive feeling.
Yeah. I want to say mano y mano, but this is for women. So that's not the right, that's not the right word, but
I don't even know how you'd say it for women.
Yeah.
So when did you decide, when your career ended, did you know you wanted to go into coaching right away?
No, I had never considered coaching when I was an athlete. And I don't know why. I have found that this is not an uncommon phenomenon. But like, I never really thought, I mean, I thought a lot about what my coach was doing and decisions that were being made and why we did certain things, but I never really made the leap then to say like, well, do I want to do that? Or how would I do that? And when I was getting closer to graduation and I really didn't know what I wanted to do, I majored in classics, which is the study of ancient Greece and Rome. So doesn't have a real, I loved it, but does not have a real direct professional pathway, shall we say. So I started to think about, well, what do I like to do? And I like to row and I like school. And I've always loved school. And so I thought, well, what can I do that would combine those things? And so I decided to go try to work at a boarding school and be able to coach rowing there and teach and be a part of, the students' lives in that way. And so emailed every boarding school in the country. One wrote back to me. They were a mile up the road in Princeton, New Jersey. So it worked out very conveniently.
Awesome.
So I went, and I unfortunately I didn't get to teach there. I did some substitute teaching, which is a whole other challenge. And I worked in the resident life office, and then I was the head coach of the girls team. And I knew it at the time, but with each passing year, I think it's even more insane that at 23 years old, I was in charge of a team of young girls. And I certainly felt the weight of that and being responsible for young women at I think a really pivotal time in their life, where having people that can push them in a caring way and can believe in them is so important. And I came to love coaching and love the girls on the team far more than I expected, far quicker than I expected. And so I really realized very quickly at that point, there's something here and I want to do more of this.
That's amazing. I think it says a lot about you, Madeline, that you understood the impact that you have on those girls. I think it's something that comes up on the show from time to time, but I was fortunate enough to have a coach in my youth, my 16th year, that was really, really, she knew the weight that she had to carry, and she knew how to make us not only better athletes, but better people. And I think that's so important for coaches to really understand, is at any age level, but especially youth levels.
Yeah.
I mean, you have all the power in your hands to build up an amazing young woman or crush them.
Yes.
I think that's,
absolutely. And like you, I had this one great coach as a high schooler, and one of the very, very, very few women coaches that I had at any stage in my career. I think I added it up at some point, and across all of the, the summer rowing and the club rowing and school rowing, I think I had about 15 coaches, and 2 of them were women over high school, collegiate, and after. But Mariah, who coached me for one season, my sophomore year, I think she understood the impact that she could have. And she was also right out of college like I was. And so I thought she was so old and cool. And then when I was doing it, I was like, oh my God, she was a baby. But she knew, and she was really, I think, the first coach I'd ever had that believed that I could do more than I was doing, believed that I was capable of more than that, and pushed me in a way that felt good. Like she was pushing me to do more and really pushing me out of my comfort zone and challenging me. But I knew that it was because she thought I could do more than I was. And I took a lot of those lessons into all of my coaching, and but particularly with, I think at every age, but particularly in high school, you have such an opportunity to do great things for those girls, or conversely to do real harm, even if through negligence. And it's just so important to have good people, good, thoughtful people that are there in that time of life for those young people.
I totally agree. It's so important. It's so important. And I think you can feel it when you're an athlete, the coaches that are there to win for themselves and the coaches that are, I mean, I coached after school. I wanted to win a national championship with my girls, but I knew that it's not just about that. It's about the athlete. You have to know, like, they're going to go on and maybe they'll play in college, maybe they won't, but the skills that you're teaching them at that level are foundational for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And I connect with you and identify with you so much on that because it's so important.
Yeah, it really is. And I do think it's something that I realized as I was doing it. I think when I started, I was like, yeah, we're going to go win. And I kind of left my college career feeling like I had something left to prove. And I was like, well, I'll do it here. Like we'll go win here, And I was really surprised at how quickly it became not about that at all, but about the girls and helping them develop and not letting any of the competitiveness fall away. And I'm sure you would agree with this too, that like you can do both of these things. You can really care for the young people that you're coaching. You can want to be there and help them develop as people, and also trust that success on the water will come as a result of doing those things the right way, that they don't need to be at the expense of one another.
100%. 100%. So how did you decide that you wanted to go from coaching at the boarding school? How did you end up at Stanford, Ohio State? How did you end up at the D1 level?
Yeah. So I did this for a year, and I say a year, it was really like winter into spring. It was really just a couple of months. And I realized like, this is awesome. I want to do more of this. And then I actually was speaking with the Stanford coach who I knew because he recruited me, and then we competed against each other in college, and had kept in touch afterwards. And he knew that I was in coaching when I was looking to try to get into high school coaching. I had reached out to him, which I always try to share with any young people that I talk to, as just a reminder of like, it can never hurt to reach out to somebody and stay in touch with them, or get back in touch with them, or see if there's anybody they can introduce you to, because you never know when a year later he had an opening and he was like, oh, okay, well, Maddie's coaching. She's, I coached in the league against Stanford at a similar school in terms of academic intensity, athletic intensity, like I get it. And so he knew that I was kind of around. And so that job opened up, and I thought like, this is a no-brainer. If I can go coach at a place like Stanford, let's go. And so that I was able to do that the next year.
That's awesome. What was it like? Did you go through any like identity shifts going from athlete to coach, or were you just able to slide into that role seamlessly after the uniform was off in your own career?
Yeah, I wouldn't say seamlessly. I think there's always challenges. I do think for me, it was buffered a little bit by the fact that I was still in rowing. And so while I was shifting my identity away from being a rower to being a rowing coach, I wasn't yet leaving rowing. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't, I realized when I did eventually leave rowing coaching a couple of years ago, that it had been from 2001 until 2022 that I had been involved in a rowing competitive season every one of those years until I left. Yeah. And so I wasn't racing, but I was still coaching. And so I didn't feel that far away. But definitely the personal shift of like, okay, well, I'm not rowing competitively. I don't have a training plan. I don't have to be at the boathouse at the same time every day. I don't have a team relying on me, but I want to be an active, healthy person. And so how do I do that? It was hard. And I'm sure I know this isn't unique, because I've talked to plenty of other athletes who feel this way. Like, how do you make that shift from, well, it's only worth doing if I'm going to do it for 2 hours, 6 days a week, or 3 hours, or twice a day, 6 days a week, right? Is it even worth going for a run if it's less than an hour? Like, it's not even worth putting the sneakers on at that point. And so I definitely went through an adjustment where it was like, I'm doing too much and then I'm doing too little. And I'm trying to figure out like, what does this look like? And I would say it took a while for me to really figure out like what kind of an athlete and what role does training and fitness play in my life now. That's different than being a competitive athlete. And I think it shifts over time. What I have discovered eventually, and again, it took several years to get this, is like what I really thrive on is learning a new skill, a new sport, like every couple of years. I really love being a novice. I love having no idea what I'm doing. Like I am not ashamed to look like an idiot. I'd love to know what the CrossFit coaches were thinking at the gym that I first walked into. And I was like, put me on an erg. I'm great. Put me under a barbell. Like I have no idea what I'm doing here. But I loved that. And so I started cycling through, I trained for a half marathon. I got really into boxing. I got really into CrossFit. I did triathlons. Now I'm doing high rocks all the time. Like I really, I don't have to just sit on the erg all the time now. And so I like doing different things and really committing to them and doing them well and immersing myself in, the training and the culture and the mindsets and skills that go into it. But then also knowing that like, if I start to tire of it, I can just go try something else or I can come back to it. I did CrossFit for a while. I did triathlon for a while, came back to CrossFit again because you're like, it's always there. And so I think having the time and space to figure out like where does this fit for me and following sort of the natural seasons that come with like, when are you just training to train? When are you training to compete? Is really empowering to have that ownership over your own training.
100%. I think that's great advice to approach the new chapter like a novice, to try a bunch of new things. I mean, I had a little bit of the opposite experience as some people that have, as you described. I felt like I still had to keep training for 2 hours a day. Like I wanted to keep that up. Like it just, nothing else. Like, or I know they did too, but it was always worth it for me. Like I had to sweat. I had to work hard. I had to almost exhaust myself where it's like, maybe that's not how you should be training for life anymore.
Yeah.
But I did go through and try a bunch of things. Like I went through the boxing phase. My husband's so much fun of me because he's like, do you still need these boxing gloves? Are you ever gonna get back into that?
You're gonna need to get in the ring.
I know, right? But it's just like, yeah, I don't know. As an athlete, that piece of your identity never leaves you. So you just are like, I have to throw myself into all these different things. But I do think that is great advice to approach it as a novice and just try to learn as much as you can. And you don't have to stick with it forever. Right. You can stick with it until you decide, hey, maybe I need something else that will bring me joy in this chapter of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's never time wasted. Like just because you're not doing it anymore doesn't mean that it was time wasted. And I think particularly like as we get older in life, just having the physical well-being to go and move your body in a different way and in a way that you haven't, and to, I hear you with the, like, is it worth it if you're not sweating? Because I still definitely struggle with that. Like I went to a Pilates class this week and I was like, I didn't even break a sweat. It was just like a waste of 45 minutes. And then I was like, you know what, actually, I can't move my core the right way the next day. Yeah. So there's a value there, but that feeling is still kind of there. And you have to just kind of like, let it come and go as it wants. But I think, now I'm at a stage in life where I'm training for longevity and I have 2 young kids. Like I'm training so that I can pick them up and walk around with them, whether they're happy or kicking and screaming. And I know that I can hold them while they do that.
You went on to win 5 national championships, additional 5 national championships. You began head coaching. At what point were you thinking, I kind of want to start something of my own? Or was that not really on your radar at that point?
So I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I think, I started realizing as I got further into my career, I have to consider the longevity of this as a profession. And is this something that I want to do for my whole life? Or is this something that I want to do now, but then be able to transition to something else later? I think, I definitely have always felt the pull to do something on my own in different senses. When I was at Stanford and Ohio State, I was an assistant coach. And I definitely felt the pull of, I want to be a head coach. I always knew I wanted to be a head coach. And a big part of that was because I wanted to prove to myself that I was a good coach and a good leader when I was the one that was in charge. Both of those programs were really successful and had really strong leaders before I got there and continued to afterwards. And so, when you think of like what the little voice is telling you in your head, right? My little voice was like, anybody in my role could have done this. I just had to come in and like not mess it up. So I need to go do my own thing and make sure that that's true. Now, with some perspective and objective lens, I can say, no, young Maddie, that's not true. But that's what I really felt at the time. And so I knew I wanted to go have my own team and have my own program and learn from the experiences I'd had before, what I wanted to do, what I didn't want to do, and really make it my own and be able to shape a team culture that I felt really uniquely proud of and responsible for. And so after a while at BU, and I felt like we got to that point, and that the team was in a place where it was consistently, the athletes there were consistently not just performing at a higher level, but behaving at a higher level. And they were good people, and they were good to each other, and they were responsible, and they contributed to the larger community of their schools. And they were going on to graduate and do incredible things. And that rowing was an important and crucial part of that. Mm-hmm. And I got to that point, I was like, okay, they're good. Like, they don't need me to do this. And I feel like I've done what I wanted to do in this profession. And also, priorities change in life. I had my first child in the second to last year of coaching. That shifts a lot of priorities. Getting out of the house at 4:45 every morning is early. I'm not saying it was easy when I was young and single, but when I was leaving my infant son to go do that 6 days a week, that was really different than it was before. And so that's when I really started to feel the pull of, okay, this isn't something that I want to do forever. I want to do something else. I want to be challenged in a different way, but I don't know what that is. And so it took some time and some work to figure out what that next step was.
Absolutely. I think even though you said the young Maddie voice maybe wasn't right about oh, anyone could do this, I do think there's something to be said about you having that feeling and needing to explore it. I think a lot of people will hush that feeling and maybe, I don't want to say regret, but maybe wish they would have listened a little bit more to their gut. Yeah. And you were able to do that, and you were able to go prove to yourself, I can do this on my own. And then again, your priorities began to shift, and you followed that intuition, which is very powerful.
Yeah, I do. And I think that's a great point to raise. And I think sometimes we hear those little voices and those doubts, and there's something to be said for, working to quiet them. But I believe in a lot of cases, the best way to quiet them is to prove them wrong. It's to take action and to prove, okay, that little voice, that little doubt that I have in my head, it's not true. And I know it's not true because I just went and did the thing that it told me I couldn't do. Now, sometimes that takes 6 years, right? Like it's not an easy thing to do that. But I think the same way that confidence is earned through action and repeated action, the way that we can quiet those doubts often is action and repeated action to prove otherwise.
Yeah. Confidence is totally a practice. I could not agree with that anymore. Like it's not, I don't think anyone's born being the most confident person in the world, or is born being able to listen to their gut 100%. It comes with practice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's doing it time and time again in different settings, under different kinds of pressures, and just, again, proving it to yourself.
So why did you decide then to start your leadership company? What was that? When did that idea really come up for you?
Yeah. So as I was leaving rowing coaching, my biggest fear was that I would never have another job where I felt so able to impact others directly and to have such a positive, direct impact on their development, to get to know them really intimately over a long time, and to be the voice there that could help them see what they were capable of all along. Not by, there's a lot of similarities here, like not by telling them, but by helping them prove it to themselves. And I really feared that I would leave coaching and then, get a job doing whatever and wouldn't be able to do that. And I was okay with that when I left. I really didn't know what was next. I knew why I was making the decision for myself and for my family. And I would have found, I think, fulfillment and joy and challenge in a lot of different things. But as I started exploring what was out there and started to understand what leadership coaching and professional coaching was like, I realized, oh, this is what I was doing already. These were all of the one-on-one conversations I was having with athletes day and day and day, day in and day out. But now I don't have to go seat race them and take them out of the varsity boat, at the end of the week. It allowed me to have that presence in other people's lives to help them realize their goals, understand their goals and realize them in a totally different setting and for totally different people. I spent a long time working with 18 to 22-year-old women, and I love that population, and it's a very narrow population. Yeah. And so I also find a lot of challenge and excitement in working with lots of different people at different stages in their careers and their lives, different kinds of industries and roles, and realizing how similar those experiences are, and how the same sorts of, mindset and systems and structures and habits and beliefs impact whether you are, a junior trying to make the varsity boat, or you're a mid-level manager who's trying to get to the next level while also balancing having a young child at home. There's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah, I think one thing you said that really stood out to me too is helping people understand their goals. I think a lot of people don't even take a minute to understand what they want. Like, we're just highly driven people, and I can speak from my own experience, but just highly driven, and you want to be successful, but you don't really take a minute to go, well, what does success mean to me? Like, what is that exactly?
Yeah. I think that understanding piece is so important, because I see this with a lot of the people that I work with. When we talk about the goals, it's like, I want to get this next job. I want to do this next thing. And then when we start digging into, but why? What does that allow you to do? Which of your values is that aligning with? And then sometimes it's spot on, right? Sometimes it's exactly right. And sometimes you really start to question, actually, I'm not sure why, right? I think it's because it's like the next step on the path. And I certainly experienced this, back to being an assistant coach and looking to be a head coach. That's a profession that's very hierarchical, right? You go from a second assistant to a first assistant to a head coach. You work at a smaller program and then a bigger program, right? It's very linear. And a lot of people, just want to go on to be a head coach because like that's the next thing that you do. And I did a lot of soul searching before I made that decision. I thought a lot about leaving coaching before I was a head coach, because I thought, I'm not going to do I want to do this? Am I just doing it because it's like the next thing to do? And what I landed on as my answer was what I just said, that I need to prove to myself that I can do this on my own. And that's a good reason to go on to the next level, not like because I should, or because people are going to wonder, why am I an assistant coach for too long? And so having done that work myself now, I can see how important it is, and why I really do that with all of the people that I work with is like, we're going to really dig into what are your goals? What are the things that are priorities for you that maybe you're not even aware of, or you haven't articulated yet in a way that actually you put it out in the world, and now you can take the steps to do it, but you have to know it yourself first.
Yeah. So who should come work with you if they are seeking some coaching, or what types of professionals are you working with now?
Yeah. So I love the people I work with. I get to work with so many cool people. And this is something that I love about being in business for yourself, is like, I get to pick who I work with, right? They pick me and I pick them. And I think just that choice in the beginning is so powerful, because we both come to the table having chosen each other and having chosen to do the work. And that's such a powerful place to start with in any kind of relationship, business or coaching or whatever. So the people that I work with are a lot of former athletes. I think my background appeals to them and I like them and I get them.
Yeah.
And so they are mid-career professionals. They work in all kinds of industries. And they usually come to me at a point where they're getting promoted or they're looking to take that next step. Their scope is expanding, their roles becoming more complex. They have expanding responsibilities at work and at home. And I think that's a really important part of all of the work that I do, is not treating work and home life separately, but doing a lot of work to make sure that they're integrated in a way that makes both of them sustainable and joyful. And so they get to a point in their careers where they realize where they are now or where they want to go to next, they're going to have to operate differently. And the way that they've approached things and what they've done to get to that point needs to be different. And they need some help to figure that out. It doesn't have to be more. It actually shouldn't be more. But as athletes, that tends to be the default. We go work out for 2 hours, right? We go to the boxing ring, and we want to just do more and more and more to get to that next level. So a lot of the work we do is actually figuring out, well, how can we be more strategic about where you're pushing and when you're pulling back, and what do you say yes to, but what do you say no to as well? And making sure that they're preserving their energy for the things that matter to them in their lives.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, sometimes it is about doing less.
Yes.
That, I mean, I've started doing this thing at the end of the day where I write down some things that I actually accomplished, because I think sometimes as athletes too, it's easy to dismiss the things that you do accomplish because they're not the big grand things anymore. They're the little things, but the things that need to be done. And I think it's important to
I
remember.
love that practice. That's such a powerful practice. And especially when you're just working and sometimes it feels like I'm just like chugging through a to-do list, right? Like sometimes all work that we do is just like, I got to just get through stuff. But you have to celebrate that too. Like if I have something that's been sitting on my to-do list that I've been putting off for a couple of days and then I do it, like, great. I should feel good about that. I should celebrate that. I love that practice that you do.
Yeah, I learned that from somebody else on the show. So I have to give credit where credit's due. I didn't come up with that myself. So if there's someone listening who maybe feels behind in their career, or that they're maybe about to, like the mid-level professional that you work with, they're on the brink of something great, what would you say to them?
Yeah. Oh, well, I love on the brink of something great. And that's what I almost always say to the people that I work with is like, you come to me at just the right time when you feel like something's about to happen. Like something really great is going to come in this new role or this young family or this big goal I've been training for. And I just need like a little bit of guidance to make that next step, whether you've been facing friction to get there, or it's just like a little bit too scary to say out loud at first, or you're not even sure, like you want more. I think something I see a lot is the desire for more, like the sense that you're stuck and there's more to do, to be done, to give, but you don't know what, right? And so what I would say to the people who are in that position, because I've been there too, is just the importance of talking about that sense and allowing others to help you and trying to resist that urge to just outwork it or even to outthink it. This isn't something you can just put your nose down and read enough books and listen to enough podcasts to answer it totally on your own. Both of those are great. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but that's not sufficient to really get to a place where you know yourself, you trust yourself, you know what you're capable of, you're realizing what you're capable of, and you're living that life that is aligned with the things that are most important to you. You need to have others that can help you on that path. So whether it's a coach or a mentor or some trusted friends who can help hold you accountable, I think having others who are going to be with you on that path and know, back to having those great high school coaches, right? Who like know when to push with love, and to help you realize what you're capable of. I think just don't be afraid to ask for help.
Madeline, it's been so great having you here. You've given such amazing words of wisdom and advice to our listeners. Or in the namesake of the show, I'd just like to know, what does changing the game mean to you?
Yeah. We talked about this before, and I was thinking about it as we were talking. And, I think what it really comes back to is this idea that we talked about at the end that I see with myself and so many of the people that I work with is having the courage to chart your own path and to know when to push forward and realize greatness in what you're already doing, and to also know when you maybe need to sidestep off that track a little bit and find out what really is your path, your way, and knowing that it looks different for everybody, but having the courage to find your own way.
I absolutely love it. Where can our listeners find you or connect with you, or if they want to work with you, where should they reach?
Yeah, so my website is mdtlead.com. I'm also on LinkedIn as Madeline Davis Tully, and I post on there as well as on Substack under my full name too. I launched a Substack at the end of last year, and I've really loved having that space to write a little bit more thoughtfully and not just, like little bite-sized chunks on LinkedIn, which are really important. And I think I take a lot of that into Substack and vice versa. But I've really enjoyed having that space to kind of explore some thoughts more deeply about sports and high performance and leadership.
I absolutely love that you brought that up. That's one thing I did want to ask you about today. So I'm glad that you gave it a plug. Go check out the Substack. I think that's amazing. What Substack is doing, it just feels a little bit more authentic to me than LinkedIn posts. So I'm glad you're doing that.
I found I started it because I was writing these LinkedIn posts. I was like, I have so many more thoughts on these things, and I can't just put it all here. And I don't know who they're of interest to when I write them. But then I think that I always end up being in a place where my goal is in each of those, there's something practical and applicable for everybody. I'm very action oriented. So this is not just like thinking around for thinking's sake. I really like to make sure that everybody who reads it can come away with something they can try to do, like writing down the things at the end of the day. I think that's so important.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Madeline. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for listening. Go check out Madeline's Substack, her website, connect with her on LinkedIn. This has been a great conversation. So just thank you again for your time.
Thanks for having me here. It was a pleasure.